It's time now for The World This Week. 7 days for Paris-based correspondents, 1 hour. The World This Week with Alison Smale, executive editor of the International Herald Tribune. How are you?
Good evening. I'm fine, thank you.
Also with us, Vidya Root, Paris bureau chief for the Bloomberg News Agency. I get told off by one of your colleagues if I say financial news agency.
Bloomberg News it is.
Bloomberg News Agency. Harold Hyman, who is foreign editor, can we say it?
Let's say it.
At France's leading 24-hour news channel, BFM TV. And freelance reporter Celestine Bolin is with us as well. Thanks for being with us. The World This Week, where you can join in the conversation all week long on Facebook and on Twitter, where our handle is at FrancoisF24. In a blog on The Economist, they write that at about 5 a.m. this Friday morning, the European Union split in a fundamental way. 23 nations opting for more central control over national budgets. Le Monde, the newspaper of record, you might say, in this country, blaring across its front page, the end of 27-nation Europe. L'Europe à 27, c'est fini. Now, the UK, which is home to Europe's financial capital, is on the outside looking in to what The Economist has dubbed the Euro Plus zone.
I would rather the English had agreed. We are in a crisis of the euro and even of the eurozone, with all its consequences. What's important here is that we know how to achieve a new monetary and fiscal union. Once we have that, we will have the heart of a treaty that can, sometime in the future, include all 27 countries.
All right, that's the German way of saying it. Listen, if you will, to the French method.
In order to accept treaty revision amongst the 27 EU states, David Cameron asked us something we all deemed to be unacceptable: to insert a protocol into the treaty, granting the United Kingdom a certain number of opt-outs on financial services regulations. We could not accept this, since we consider, on the contrary, that a part of the world's woes stem from the deregulation of the financial sector.
All right, pretty blunt words there from the French president. And it seems as though the week began with a lot of Germany bashing, and it's ending with Brit bashing instead.
What do you mean in terms of just from France or generally speaking? You know, people have been very critical of Merkel and of Germany's behaviour throughout because they've stuck very toughly to one line. And I think that, you know, the normal course of Euro negotiations is at some point you enter a shade of grey, and that's where the compromises are made. But Mrs. Merkel hasn't really given very much ground because of the deeply held German belief that the way they see imposing more discipline is the only way forward, and B, because I think she's understood. I mean, you know, it's perhaps a bit of an exaggeration to say that she got rid of Silvio Berlusconi, but certainly her politics helped to see him the end of his, anyway, current political term, and I think she's feeling that she's pulled off quite a lot of successes. Last Monday we saw the French and the Germans come together in an agreement. It was extremely plain what they wanted, and David Cameron was equally blunt about what he wouldn't be able to accept. He has a Eurosceptical party back at home. He probably is speaking for a majority in the UK. I mean, we don't have any instant polls, so we don't know, but that's probably the case. So, yes, I mean, I think Le Monde has it right. At the moment, anyway, it's hard to see how you sort of glue this back together as the Europe of 27 that means a great deal.
Vidya Root, are you surprised by the way this summit went?
No, I think this was pretty much what people thought might happen. It was clear Cameron going into it was going to go in with a pretty strong view about Britain's say in anything in the treaty. I think all three leaders, Cameron, Merkel, and Sarkozy, can walk away from this claiming at least a little bit of victory. I think Merkel can say, you know, that she made sure that the 27, or at least the 26, stand by some pretty stern fiscal discipline rules. Sarkozy can say, he actually did get some sort of accord, regardless of the fact that, the Cameron wasn't part of it. And I think Cameron can go away saying that he did what was right for Britain, that he looked after British interests. Merkel, I think, did actually give in a little bit. She did lose out on the fact that investors won't have to take losses. Something that she was very. The Germans were very, very clear about right through these endless summits over the last 2 years. So she did give in a little bit. So I think all three of them can claim at least little bits of victory here.
All right, and it was a short night for the UK Prime Minister, David Cameron, who did not blink when he said he would stand by the pledge he made to the House of Commons before travelling to Brussels.
We're never going to join the euro. We're never going to give up the sort of sovereignty that these countries are having to give up in order to enter a fiscal union. So in some ways, the fact they're going to do this in a separate treaty without actually, distorting the European Union treaty itself, in many ways, given we couldn't get those safeguards, perhaps it's a better outcome.
All right, and the initial reaction, Harold Hyman, it's interesting to see in the UK, is divided over David Cameron's stance. A lot of people in Britain worry that the UK is isolated, especially because it's home to Europe's financial center, and there's the fear that a lot of those financial services might migrate to the continent.
Well, it's about time they got scared, because they've been doing everything to get out of the EU for a very long time. So it's much more comfortable for the 26th not to be with them. And I've always wondered, why don't they leave? Or why don't they get expelled? So it's a bit of a radical thing I'm saying, but I don't see what else to call it. They're really in it going backwards. So if half of Britain is worried, I guess the other half is overjoyed.
How Eurosceptical is Britain, Celestine Bowen?
I mean, I think, that this dates way back. I mean, think of Thatcher, think of the way, it took a long time for the UK to get into the European Union. It's an island nation. I mean, just as Germany has, sort of a lot of history behind the negotiating stance it took, so does Britain have a sort of deep cultural, historical reason for wanting to be set aside. I mean, I think the thing is that just like Germany has benefited from the European Union more than it cares to admit, so too has the UK. I mean, it can't be, the single market has been very helpful for them. And obviously they want to still, I'm sorry to say this, but have their cake and eat it too. I mean, they want, they want that single market, and they want to be the financial center, and they want to be the sort of reference point for a major part of the economy. But, I mean, they're asking a pretty high price.
Alison, in 1984, Margaret Thatcher, she made that famous statement, "I want my money back," and she got a rebate for the United Kingdom. This time, David Cameron went to Brussels and he said, "I want veto power on financial regulation." He didn't get that. Now, he'll score political points, as you said, back home. But in the end, is the UK going to lose out more than it gains?
Well, I mean, I think there's a great danger of that, because there's clearly not real clarity as to how much then the instruments that are meant to regulate the single market of the 27 will be used, quote unquote, in ways that are perceived as either pro or anti the British stance, or pro or anti the continental European stance. So it's open to question, but clearly politically he felt he couldn't do anything else. Let's remember that the Conservative Party got itself into a bit of trouble in October, I think it was, when this whole right of giving a petition for issues that should be legislated on resulted in a sort of mad scramble by the leadership of the Conservative Party to avoid a referendum.
Because there's a coalition government.
Membership. Plus, you have the coalition government, Lib Dems, Nick Clegg, very well-known figure in Brussels, a former European MP. I mean, he's somebody who's definitely backed the European Union. So what you see, as you've seen in France and Germany, but I think because we've been concentrating so much on the negotiations to save the euro, and because Britain isn't in the euro, Britain's attitude was, until a few weeks ago, not really part of people's considerations, especially here on the continent. And it only, perhaps belatedly, became part of those considerations. Clearly, the continental Europeans and the British did not find a way to set up this summit so that they could do one of the usual fudges and compromises that we're used to seeing. And obviously that's partly because David Cameron was under such political pressure, and under pressure from the so-called City, which is the financial centre in London, and is the source of, you know, quite a lot of the few things that go right with the UK economy these days. So I think he was under pressure from all sides, and clearly the Merkel and Sarkozy and other European leaders. I mean, it's interesting that the Poles have been so forthright they want to join the euro, and it's very easy to imagine in 5 years' time, assuming that the euro survives, Poland is in the euro, the United Kingdom is outside the euro, and outside a sort of vast political and economic network.
That's an important point. Before the summit, Poland's prime minister said he feared the end of Europe's integration. Obviously, Vidya Root, it's not just 3 nations inside the Eurozone, as Alison Smale has just pointed out. There's 27 of them. And a lot of people, even outside the Eurozone, they want to see this thing succeed.
Yeah, I think if you look at the summit today, the remaining of the 10 remaining nations, you had pretty much 9 of them saying they'll take it back to their governments. It wasn't an outright no, even though Hungary is a little reluctant. You know, and Czechoslovakia too. Well, I should say the Czech Republic too. So you do, but you know, but the remaining countries seem to go along with the Eurozone. And I think that clearly is a victory for the authors of the accord. There's no question about that.
Now, there's just one slight detail that hasn't quite been worked out. The deal fleshed out in Brussels, long on belt-tightening, but where is the money? The front page of today's Financial Times, banks shortfall at 115 billion euros. We were talking, to quote David Cameron, about a big bazooka approach. We were expecting one perhaps from the European Central Bank. That didn't happen at this summit.
No, and I mean, honestly, you know, it seems that, you know, the European, I mean, the Draghi, the European Bank president had sort of indicated at one point that he was going in one direction, and then it seems he's sort of taking it back. I honestly don't know the backstory on that, and you know, you probably do. But you know,
yeah, I mean, I think the markets, at least in terms of sort of receiving this accord today, they were far from exuberant. You know, it's still a very
Frankfurt
much
finished up though.
Very much a wait and see, but it's pretty lame. You know, if this accord had been sort of seen as, you know, the euro saver, you would have seen a lot more reaction. I think Italian, Spanish bonds still fell. The euro was barely, you know, sort of lackluster today. So I think you got to see it for what it is. There's 1.1 trillion euros of euro government debt that needs to be repaid next year, 2012. Half of it in the first half. You've got banks with 650 billion euros in refinancing just in the first half.
And a lot of those
a lot
of those treasury bonds mature in January. Are we
a lot in the first 2 months? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of repayment that's going to happen. And so this, you know, while Angela Merkel today said, you know, this is sort of a step toward gaining credibility, you know, for the euro plan. There's a lot that's left sort of unsaid, unspoken, and undone. And you're right, the ECB was, you know, the markets are still expecting the ECB to sort of be like the Federal Reserve or the Bank of England,
but he closed the door now.
Which no, but you know, in some ways, the fact that they came out with a 200 billion, you know, contribution from national central banks is sort of definitely a positive thing, because now they can say this is...
It's not no, but not yet?
That's right. I mean, they could say this is a down payment, you know, for the plan, and sort of then go shop the plan to the Chinese or other reserve-rich countries. So it's yeah, but I think people expected a lot more from the ECB, and that hasn't happened.
And if it's
but did he make a sort of
U-turn?
I mean,
claims
he was
not.
misunderstood.
He said today, actually, Draghi today said that he was surprised that his comments earlier this week were taken to mean that the ECB was going to step in and start buying bonds. But, you know, markets read what they want to read in sort of the ECB speak. So
yeah, no, to trumpet the IHT for a mini little second, our Frankfurt correspondent, because Draghi had said that, made those comments late last week. The very next day, we had an exclusive interview with Jens Weidmann, who's the head of the Bundesbank, the German central bank, and he was very, very clear. He said that, you know, that's not at
Over
all
my
what
dead
Draghi...
body.
Well, he also said,
Right.
Draghi didn't mean that. Now, whether Draghi meant it and 24 hours later listened to what Jens Weidmann said,
deciphering
who
what a
knows?
new central bank boss
right.
says, that's interesting. If it's not sorted out, though, more seriously, this isn't just Europe's problems. Undercapitalized euro area banks may call back money from elsewhere around the globe, thereby plunging the entire planet into recession. And even if they do sort it out, there's another hurdle, illustrated in a Tom Tolles cartoon that ran in this week in the International Herald Tribune. There you see the snail, that's the global economy, and the guy on the other side of the cliff saying the next part is critical. Harold Hyman, the mood isn't great going into Christmas and the New Year.
Economically in Europe? No, of course not. But it isn't good in the U.S. either. It isn't good in Canada. It isn't good in China. It isn't good in Japan. So my impression is we're all in the same doghouse. So I don't see who's going to gain out of shooting at the other one. I really don't. I mean, you know, if Europe gets its act together, it's good for the Europeans. It's good for the U.S. Obama said so. So I really think we're going to see we ought to see some pretty heavy help,
coming.
Solidarity, not firepower.
No, but as in, you know, sort of help coming from.
Well, each one will try not to destabilize the other one. Because,
all right, and we'll continue to follow this. When we come back, we're going to look at what's been a surprise week in Russia. Stay with us. The World This Week continues.